In the old days, developers would have to create a dedicated server for their API. But luckily, with modern technologies, we can create an API right here inside of our Next.js project. The first thing we want to do is we want to add a folder called API into the app folder. That way, we make sure we separate all the rest of the code, the pages and the images and the components from the API. And inside of this API folder, we're going to create another folder called auth. Auth is a short word for authentication, and it would kind of make sense for us as we're doing user login logout for now. And to create your first API route, Next.js made a convention. Whatever file that is named route.js will become an API endpoint. And we're going to write export function gate. The export keyword, it just means that we can use this function outside of our project. The function keyword is here because it's a simple JavaScript function, and the get should be capitalized. And it means that when anyone makes an HTTP GET request to our API endpoint, we're going to execute the code that's inside. If you remember from the previous lessons, there are four major types of HTTP requests. There is the GET one, where usually you request information. There is the POST one, where you are adding some information to a database, for instance. There is a patch one when you want to edit, and there is the delete one to, yes, you get it. And then we're going to return this thing here. So let's break it down. First, the response is a global object that's available. Our project is using JavaScript, and there are some objects that are available to us developers. The response one is one of them. And it's basically the response that you send when you get an HTTP request. Because remember, to transit data on the internet, we make HTTP request with a method, the get method, for instance. So we receive a request and we answer with a response. And the response is here to help us format the data so that it can transit on the internet. If you hover it, you will see that there are a few methods on it. If you don't like what the person sent you, you can reply with an error, like your email is incorrect. You can send some data in JSON format. You can also redirect the person to a different URL. There are a bunch of methods. And in this case, I'm just using the JSON method. So I'm going to send back some data. And the data is this JavaScript object that is going to be formatted in JSON format. Maybe we can give it a try. So let's go to our internet browser. Maybe we open the developer console so we understand what is going on here. Go to the network tab to see that how the data will be transiting. And type localhost 3000. And then since we're putting everything inside of the API folder, you have to write /API/ the other folder we created for user authentication, so /auth. And when you press enter, you'll see that there are a few things happening. First, I'm not getting an HTML page back, I'm getting some data. And now if we look at what is going on here, we see that we have made a request. And when we click on it, you'll see some interesting information. So we've made a request. The URL is the one we just type in the internet browser. The method is get, because as a person, whenever you type something in your internet browser, it will make a get request. All the other method, post, patch, delete are for developers. And if you go to the response tab, you see what we see on the left side as well, which is the JSON objects we wrote inside of our Next.js project. Right now, it's not doing anything very interesting, but in this function, you could connect to the database, let's say count the number of users inside of the users collection and return the number so that on your application, you could show something like 132 users are using our service. Okay, now we're going to create another function with capitalized letter post. This one will be used to handle any post request on the API auth endpoint. And for this function, let's do a real use case. So since we want to sign up users to our application, what do we have to do? First, we'll have to get the email and the password from the request body. So there will be a page on the front end where there's a form for people to input their email and password, and we're going to send these to our API. Then we're going to create a connection with the database so that we can query to check if the user already exists. If the user exists, that means the person has already signed up for our application. Then in this case, we're going to create a session, and we're going to learn what is a session a little bit later in this course. And if the user does not exist, then we have to create a new user and a session for this user. And then we return the session token to the user so that he can use it to log into his dashboard. Now, if I go to the button login component, here is what I would have to do to log in users. First, we would have to create a new page. Then we would have to create a form so that people can sign up with their email and password or log in with Google, for instance. And then we would have to make a post request to the /API/auth endpoint, providing the credential of the user, so like for instance, email and password. And just like this, by creating API endpoints here, you can make your front end, the HTML pages, communicate with your backend, the brain of your applications. But since you're a developer now, you have to become lazy, remember? So what if I told you that we didn't have to write any of this code and something could do it for us?